Hello, Miss Bad Friends. We're here today to talk about American Horror Story, Season 10, double feature, and the latter half, specifically, Death Valley. I already covered Red Tide. Just got home from watching the finale, and that was not even an ending, really. It was just a sort of a flop towards the end. Like Death Valley, we've got this UFO kidnap, alien experimentation, conspiracy theories plot. Okay, and we're split between the 1950s in the black and white portion, and like the modern day in like the colour portion, and there was a few problems with like overall, but like I very much enjoyed the black and white section with like Neil McDonough and Sarah Paulson. Like, Neil was wasted in black and white because he has like the most beautiful eyes in the entire world, and you can't appreciate them in black and white because they're just such a piercing colour. And this is not just a video about how handsome he is, I swear. Like, I do feel that he was quite wasted in this role because he's such a good actor and didn't have great material to work with. I felt like the way that they told the story, which jumped back and forth in the timeline a lot, was sort of, it worked in the moment, but I would really like to see us like a smash cut of it actually in chronological order. I think in chronological order it would make a bit of a difference rather than jumping forward and back and forward and back and forward and back, because at some point I'm like doing mental like arithmetic to try and figure out like what year it is. Like, we start at 1954, 7 years later, 6 months earlier, 1 year later, 2 months later. Like stop it, Ryan Murphy and Manny Cordor. I don't like to do maths when I'm watching American Horror Story, which I usually have to do because you're not great at those things. But yes. And now I have a cat. Yes, you have a lovely tail. So the modern day stuff of it, like, clearly, like, Ryan loves is new people, what he found for American Horror Stories. Particularly, I think he really likes Kaya Gerber, who's very, very, very beautiful, but not the best of actresses. I'm very, very sorry. I felt like the colour parts were like interesting in bits, but there wasn't sort of enough of it. Having a 6-4 split in episode numbers, I think that it made Death Valley suffer for it. There was lots of things, like lots of unanswered questions, and that's an American Horror Story thing all over, that leaving you with a load of unanswered questions. But this in particular was quite bad this season for doing that. Like, the alien played by Angelica Ross, Theatre, we never really got an explanation where she came from. Like, clearly she's a hybrid that happened at some point between the black and white and the colour, but we never went into that, and they could have easily done that. They could have easily done that instead of doing Winter Kills from Red Tide, which was trash. We've got like things like so how did she come along? Why wasn't she throat slit and drowned like all of the other little alien babies? And for me, like listen, you've got one baby in 60 years that's apparently acceptable, and the first thing that you do is kill the mother so that you can clone her and have the body pumping out more and more babies. You haven't gone, well, why is... It's not very scientific. I think, like, it sort of shows that, like, Manicoto and Ryan Murphy's general lack of understanding about the scientific method, because it's like, well, why did this one work? We need to keep this subject around from our experiments. You can't just say the experiment is over. Why did this one subject work? We have to work this out. Like, why do you keep Calico around if her babies don't work? Why didn't Calico get like and killed? Like, why is that not a thing? I just don't understand. Like, you've never had a baby apart from Theta survive, so like there's going to be hit and miss stuff. Like, you're maybe not going to get the food right, and what are you going to do there? There was lots of things that I felt like overall there was a lot of unanswered questions that easily could have been covered in like one more episode had they not done the stupid 6-4 episode split. Also, practically, like, you're gonna have to move. Ugh. Practically all of the cast at various points in interviews had said that the two halves would be connected, that there'd be plot threads from Red Tide that you'd recognise and pick up in Death Valley, and that didn't happen. There's been much discussion about it on Reddit. Like, I've been like scanning it since I got home and going through like the threads and everything, and the best anyone can come up with is that the characters played by Angelica Ross and Leslie Grossman survived in both halves. That's not really a connection, but that's the best anybody can come up with. Everyone was kind of thinking, like, surely it's going to come out that the black pills were produced at, like, Area 51 and that the scientist was part of the experiment. No, nope, that wasn't covered, no. So we don't know. We have absolutely no bloody idea. And in the final episode, they decide to introduce a second alien species, reptile people, without putting any hints of them being in the previous 3 episodes. If they had, that would have actually been quite cool if they'd have just had like in the background characters were like doing the reptile blinky eye thing and the tongue flicky reptile people thing. That would have been cool because that would have like laid some groundwork for it, but they didn't. They just introduced it in the last episode. Like, let's just throw it in and see if it sticks. And neither alien species were the aliens from Asylum, which you think, like, why? Because that was basically the same plot in Asylum, like aliens kidnapping humans, impregnating them, and then the babies being significant, and that's the same plot in Death Valley. Yes, it does, full of cat hair. But it's not, neither species are the same. And I know that at one point Ryan said that the aliens in Asylum were actually angels, but that doesn't really make any sense. So it seems a bit of a wasted opportunity, a waste of a lot of good actors. Sarah Paulson, like her last time in American Horror Story, and she's bowed out with TB Karen and with Mamie Eisenhower. And Karen was a lot of fun, but I felt like, again, her character was not explored to its full potential, and Mamie Eisenhower was just a little bit odd. I felt particularly uncomfortable with the sex scene between her and Valiant Thor, which is a very stupid name. Yeah, I felt like very uncomfortable, and I just felt like Sarah was wasted this season. And if it's been a last season, it's just a little bit sad, really. Like Red Tide, apart from when Karen slits her wrists and the water that's washing onto the beach turns red, that was the only bit of Red Tide. And like Death Valley, they went camping in like the desert, but like these are the most inconsistent American Horror Story titles that they've had. Like, everything else has been very simple and to the point. Murder House, Asylum, Coven, Cult, Freak Show, Hotel. Roanoke. Um, these have all been about the core things. Like, really, this season should have been called Double Feature. She fell off my knee. Oh, but held on with her claws. Oh, that hurt. Really, the two halves should have been called, like, Weird Vampires and Alien Conspiracy, to be more accurate and to be more in line with, like, previous seasons of American Horror. I know my friend had sort of said, like, he's kind of done now with American Horror because it's just so disappointing and they never stick the landing. And I can sort of see where he's coming from, but at the same time, I'm like a bit of a glutton for punishment, and I'll probably stick it out like one more season just to see if we can get back to that renaissance of, like, I'm not going to say good writing, but at least entertaining writing. But I felt like this for a while with American Horror, that they're not great at answering questions and having a full conclusive story. And they usually have like a few rambly episodes towards the end that don't really go anywhere and aren't really relevant and could have easily finished several episodes beforehand. And I don't know, I kind of just want to take Ryan Murphy to one side and sit him down and pat him on the head and be like, do you need me to explain to you about horror again, Ryan? Because I think that you've kind of forgotten what your genre is. So 4 episodes for Death Valley wasn't enough. The story was left inconclusive. The story was unconcluded. Finally get the right verbs and tense, and it wasn't satisfying. And Red Tide was like, it was fine up until that final episode, which was trash. So, like, on the whole, season 10, very disappointing. Not a great season, not the worst season. Because American Horror Stories is definitely the worst season. But, like, this is pretty close to the bottom of the list, I'm afraid.